Schumer's nightmare is coming true. Kavanaugh is about to flip this Democrats' vote, by Amy Moreno for TruthFeedNews.com. Well, Chuck Schumer tried, but like with everything else the Democrats try, this effort is also a failure. We're, of course, referring to blocking Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to SCOTUS. The Democrats never had a chance, but any sliver of hope they did have was just dissolved. Sorry, Chucky. Well, I guess he's going to need another box of tissues. From the Washington Examiner, Judge Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation process will take a new turn Monday as he readies for a sit-down with Senate Joe Manchin and begins to meet with Senate Democrats who are largely opposed to his nomination to replace retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court. In the opening weeks following his nomination, the judge has met with more than 24 senators or Republicans, but that will change Monday when Kavanaugh sits down with Manchin, who will be the first Democrat to meet with President Trump's Supreme Court nominee. At the moment, Manchin is one of only 2 Senate Democrats who have scheduled meetings with the judge. Senator Joe Donnelly, a Democrat, is also scheduled to meet with the Supreme Court hopeful August 15. Others are in the process of scheduling meetings, including Senator Heidi Heitkamp, whose office is working with the White House towards setting up a meeting with Kavanaugh. With the upcoming meetings, the ball game for Kavanaugh will begin in earnest. Now that Kavanaugh has met with a number of Republicans, he's warmed up and ready to take meetings with Democrats, some whom may not be very inclined to vote for him, said Ron Bonjean, a GOP strategist who worked on Justice Neil Gorsuch's confirmation last year. It's a very wise strategy to ease in the nominee into that process because he will meet with well over 70 to 80 senators when all is said and done with. Now it's going to get a little tougher for him. A handful of Senate Democrats, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, announced at the outset of the confirmation fight they intended to oppose Kavanaugh's nomination. Opposition campaigns have focused primarily on the security of abortion rights and access to affordable health care if there are 5 conservative justices on the High Court. Kavanaugh's detractors have also taken umbrage with his views on executive power, which are amplified given Special Counsel Robert Mueller's ongoing investigation into Russian meddling. I think the key here to watch for is that some of these Democrats will try to use the words of Kavanaugh and interpret them in some way during the individual meetings and go out and hold a press conference about what was said, Bonjean said. One can imagine a Senator Sheldon Whitehouse or a Senator Richard Blumenthal asking about presidential powers, trying to drive a wedge, trying to see what Kavanaugh may say regarding the president. Blumenthal did just that last year during Gorsuch's confirmation process, telling reporters after their meeting that Gorsuch disavowed attacks by the president against the judiciary. Kavanaugh will likely face questions from Democrats about his writings on independent counsel investigations and past comments on executive power, an issue that has taken center stage in his confirmation battle. But in-person meetings with Democrats skeptical of his views could clear up lingering concerns. The meetings will give him an opportunity to put into context any of his past comments that have been distorted and to have a face-to-face conversation with senators in order to explain the full context of what he was saying, a source familiar with the nomination process said. Despite the stated opposition to Trump's Supreme Court nominee, other Senate Democrats, particularly those representing states Trump won in 2016, are reserving judgment. Manchin, Donnelly, and Heitkamp in particular find themselves in delicate positions ahead of Kavanaugh's confirmation. The 3 all supported Gorsuch's nomination to the High Court last year. The trio also represents states Trump won in 2016 are in the midst of tight re-election races this year. For Democrat incumbents like Manchin, Donnelly, Heitkamp, they really have one more chance to show they don't completely oppose Trump, and voting for Kavanaugh is it, said one Republican strategist. They all understand that a high-profile contrast with the popular President Trump in the weeks leading up to a very difficult election would sink their remaining chances of hanging on to their seats. Republicans are aiming to confirm Kavanaugh by October 1st, the start of the Supreme Court's next term, but requests by Senate Democrats who are calling for the release of all documents pertaining to Kavanaugh's time as staff secretary for President George W. Bush could make achieving that goal more difficult. Many Senate Democrats are refusing to meet with him until an agreement is reached with the White House to review the documents. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley has rebuked the demands for the full tranche of Kavanaugh's White House records, telling Schumer this week he expects the committee will receive up to 1 million pages of documents stemming from Kavanaugh's tenure in the White House. He criticized Democrats for launching a fishing expedition designed to obstruct the confirmation process at the expense of taxpayer dollars. It's the senatorial equivalent of sticking your finger in your ear and shouting, "Nah, nah, whatever." Carrie Severino, chief counsel and policy director of Judicial Crisis Network, told the Washington Examiner of Democrats' refusal to meet with Kavanaugh. "I'm sorry, the nominee is still here." Severino said the resistance by Democrats to meet with Kavanaugh is miles away from normal and very discouraging. Just 2 days after then-President Barack Obama nominated Elena Kagan to the Supreme Court in 2010, for example, she met with McConnell and Senator Jeff Sessions, then the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee. Then Senator Mark Kirk was the first Republican to meet with Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, in 2016, doing so just under 2 weeks after Garland was nominated. Republicans, however, refused to hold confirmation hearings for Garland, and the Supreme Court seat he was nominated to was ultimately filled by Gorsuch. Thus far in Kavanaugh's nomination process, neither Schumer nor Senator Dianne Feinstein, the Judiciary Committee's top Democrat, have sat down with him in more than 2 weeks since his nomination. It's unclear if and when Democrats who have stated their opposition to Kavanaugh will meet with the judge, but doing so could, at a minimum, lower the heat of the hyper-partisan environment surrounding his nomination. Even if you don't change their vote, you might change how strongly they end up opposing the nominee, the source familiar with the process said. Neither Donnelly, Manchin, or Heitkamp have given any indication of whether they plan to support Kavanaugh, instead pledging to thoroughly review his record and qualifications. I'm glad they're willing to at least give him the opportunity to make his case before coming to a predetermined conclusion, like many of their Democrat colleagues, Severino said. Their positions heading into the midterm elections have made the trio a target of advocacy groups across the political spectrum, looking to either tank Kavanaugh's nomination or push it across the finish line. Judicial Crisis Network released a $1.5 million ad by this week targeting the three, as well as Senator Doug Jones. The latest ad buy is the third phase of what has so far been a $5.3 million campaign in support of Kavanaugh. SBA List, a pro-life organization, is also planning events in 7 states, including North Dakota, Indiana, and West Virginia, as part of efforts to urge support for Kavanaugh's nomination. Mallory Quigley, the group spokeswoman, told the Washington Examiner. But Demand Justice, a liberal judicial group, has also taken to the airwaves to urge opposition to Kavanaugh's nomination. The senators' challengers, too, are also capitalizing on the Supreme Court vacancy in efforts to boost their campaigns, according to a spokesman for Patrick Morrisey, Manchin's GOP opponent. The campaign plans to highlight Manchin's waffling over his decision on Kavanaugh. Well, if the Democrats are against him, he must be good, so... You know, I mean, even Chuck Schumer started calling George Bush to help oppose this guy. So, I mean, look, they're looking at a losing battle, because I don't think there's anything that you can find against the guy to say we're not voting for him, except for being spiteful. But we know the Democrats, they're going to try at every turn, but it seems like they're losing. And, you know, an uphill battle as usual. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.